John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high.
Cinema Classics is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows on Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. And listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Gary Hammond.
And this is Cinema Classics. And this is certifiable classic.
Amazing.
It's a Wonderful Life. That's not a surprise to 90% of the people who are listening and watching our show. And what's your attitude toward It's a Wonderful Life? We share this for so many years, but what do you really think?
It's so uplifting, so life affirming. So here is this guy that wants to do big things, wants to go out and do big things and change the world with construction and architecture and just being out there in the world and going everywhere, and instead he does wonderful little things time after time after time, which change the world for so many people that he impacts.
Well, the interesting part of this is that, and though it's probably the most popular film for Christmas time,
Yes.
is that I would just guess half the film is depressing. Would that be accurate?
I don't think half the film was depressing. I think that the first part and the last part, I don't think, no, he is such a good actor.
When he's going to jump over the bridge, you don't think that's depressing?
No,
Oh.
because Clarence
Well, yeah,
saved him.
yeah.
Yeah.
But getting up to there.
His anguish, John, was so real. It seemed more real to me this time watching it than anything I've seen recently in terms of his absolute despair. And then he is so desperate that he goes and drinks, which is not the right thing to do under the circumstances. And then he's even more desperate as far as that goes.
Yeah, right.
But in terms of the movie, he's there. I'm going to say that 10% of the movie is him as a child, and 10% of the movie is him in despair.
Okay.
And 80% of the movie is him being a wonderful guy, with one after another good deed done that people are benefiting from. And as a kid, it's uplifting, and I've seen it so many times, I know it's going to have a happy ending, so maybe that's why I wasn't despairing.
Yeah.
But I felt his despair. I really recognized it.
We're talking about what year? 1946?
46, yes. And this is the first movie Jimmy Stewart made after the war, and he was a squadron leader. He was a pilot of bombers in World War II, and he was thinking of joining the Stewart hardware store in Pennsylvania, where he grew up. He was suffering what now would be called PTSD, and he was convinced to do this movie and did it very reluctantly.
And he and the director, Frank Capra, had just come back from World War II.
Yes.
So this was a delicate movie. You had to play it right.
Yeah.
And things like James Stewart, as he's called here.
Yes.
And then he'll be called Jimmy Stewart.
Right.
But James Stewart has his first kiss after World War II.
Yeah.
And he kissed her, I think, in the telephone booth or something, and they had such a to-do over that in the film. And he was so concerned about it, and in fact they had to do some alterations because it was a little bit too passionate when they finally
It was pretty passionate. Yeah, that made it past the censors. This was a code covered movie. Yeah.
And popular at Christmas time to me, it's so interesting because actually Scrooge is despairing too.
Yeah.
At points. I mean, neither movie is a White Christmas, which seems to be always.
Well, and speaking of Scrooge, we have Mr. Potter. Talk about a Mr. Scrooge character. Oh my heavens!
Lionel Barrymore.
Yeah.
It's a good family tradition there for
Yes.
fine acting.
Yes.
And boy, he just chews it up.
He does.
He plays Potter, which a lovely name. Because then they have Potter's Field.
Potter's Field, yeah. Potter's Field, where the poor people live and rent from Mr. Potter.
Yeah, it certainly dovetails with our recent election. That is, all of us voting were concerned that we got the right person in the White House, And because we're concerned too about our freedoms.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of people who are worried that we might lose some freedoms. And if they want to have an idea of why it was right to worry, they ought to see this.
Yes.
Because Potter is the perfect example of somebody who runs a totalitarian regime. I mean, he runs the town.
Yes.
And the only company he can't beat is the Bailey building alone. But anyway, okay, so how then does James Stewart, now, you know something, you must identify with him. This guy's tall.
He's 6'3".
He's 6'3".
Yeah.
Do you notice in the film he looks like he's 7'3" with everybody, with those shots?
Well, he was so thin that he failed his Army physical when he went to enlist several times, and but they realized that he was a pilot and they needed pilots, and so they took him in. Ultimately, I'm going to say the third time. I don't really remember that, but it was multiple times. So yeah, he's as skinny as a rail.
Yeah, but actually, when Frank Capra took this over, he had Stewart in mind as he wrote it, because they initially wanted Cary Grant.
Right.
But, okay,
Yeah.
Cary
Yeah.
Grant's not bad.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little too, even though Stewart's a handsome guy.
Yeah.
But Grant is so outrageously handsome.
Right.
It might have been distracting.
Yeah, and he's too suave, and we needed
Eh, eh,
more.
yeah.
We needed more small town,
Yeah.
nice guy.
Country bumpkin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Stewart fit just perfectly. And I think that his career went just sky blazes.
It did, and they had there was concern as to whether or not this was going to work. He'd won an Academy Award before the war for Philadelphia Story.
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
And
he did.
And so to do this and have it come off, and it did not do well in theaters, but it was well, it didn't do well in theaters. It didn't even make its budget back in the initial outing.
Yeah, you're right. And since then, such things as we're jumping all around. So
It's okay.
Did you realize that they colorized this?
I heard that. I didn't watch it in color.
Ouch! Yeah, I mean, I've seen some frames from it. It's just disgusting. Well, they tried to do the same thing with Casablanca.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch that in color.
Oh,
either. No.
oh boy! If you want to know how beautiful black and white is, particularly when you're doing something as morally simplistic as this, right? We got the bad guys, we got the good guys.
Right.
We know.
Black hats, white hats. We know.
We know. So black and white just does that perfectly. And this is the first time they've had snow that was actually almost looked like real snow.
Mm-hmm.
They had a CO2 combination or something that was barely discernible as fake snow.
I thought it was real snow.
I did too. And the fable here is actually, I think that some people would want to say, is a reverse of the Christmas Carol in the way in which it's presented. I'm thinking of my original thoughts on this, is that Scrooge has him visited by his past, right? We do have Scrooge visited by his past. Now we have this one. Is it? Am I correct on that?
I'm not with you yet. So Clarence is visiting his past, but Jimmy's not visiting his past.
Right.
We're visiting his past,
Right.
but he's not. He is in the present, and we are introduced to him as a boy, and then we're introduced to him as a young man at the high school dance. Great scene. Beverly Hills High School. That was a brand new gym floor over a brand new pool at Beverly Hills High School, and they got permission to film that dance scene at Beverly Hills High School.
And my granddaughter, whom you know,
Yes.
went to Beverly Hills High School, and so she was quite aware of that. What a fantastic creation! The floor.
It's so fun. And in Carrie, there's a dramatic scene at a high school dance too, but this was much more uplifting than that. But the thing is that he's not being taken by Christmas past, Christmas present, Christmas future. Clarence is seeing that, and Clarence is being informed about this guy so that he can come down to Earth in a body and try to save him from committing suicide. And that was Clarence's task. So that's how I see it. So we get to visit him and see what he was. Well, I've said it, so that's enough.
Yeah. one of the other interesting things about this is that he gets a chance to see what life would be like without him.
Yes.
And what does that mean? I mean, what do we find?
Right. So, and where he does that, again, Clarence doesn't take him back to look over
Right.
what his life was like. He looks at what his life is if he had never existed, and not to give too much away, but his family would have been dramatically affected. Donna Reed, who became his wife, would have been dramatically affected. The town, most of all, would have turned, it's like in Back to the Future, when he goes into the future and Biff has got the book on gambling, and so he's taken over the town. So instead of this town being this wonderful place, it is this hellhole of gamblers and drugs and crime.
In comparison, yes, great.
Yeah, and so Potter's there, and Pottersville is worse.
What we need to do is direct our audience to our podcast. And our podcast for Cinema Classics is Double Take, and you have to go to WCBE.org to find it. So
Get it all.
and I can't believe anybody would want to hear more about this. But we're going to challenge them to come on back. Meanwhile, Gary Hammond, you were a perfect choice for me to share our thoughts about this, and we have more to say. Maybe a little bit more about other Christmas films, or about Jimmy Stewart, or whatever we want in the
Yes.
podcast. What do you advise about It's a Wonderful Life?
You get to watch it every Christmas because it's all over. It's all over TV and streaming services, etc., etc. And so watch it. It's a wonderful life. And actually, it's very uplifting. It's very positive. And the Christmas part of it is it is a Christmas movie because it's become a Christmas movie.
Right.
It's not Santa Claus. It's not
right.
all that other stuff. But
we're celebrating it at Thanksgiving time.
yeah.
That's we have our show, and it's perfect. It fits perfectly fine, except for those Christmas scenes. You're so right.
Yeah.
It fits almost any time, which is a part of what makes it a classic and universally appealing. And just close that by saying the idea that the individual can make a difference is really a pretty super idea.
Yeah.
And this is true in everything I think you and I have known in our lives and our
Yeah.
professional lives.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always been, I've always hear the raging Cajun say, it's the economy stupid. I like to say it's the people stupid.
Yeah.
I'm John DeSando.
Cinema, 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 cinema. Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high and low. Cinema Classics on